The national income is at an all-time high. We have the highest standards of living we have ever enjoyed. The products of our great industrial plant are more widely distributed and the profits from it. More people are working.
In early 1956, Chrysler's new cars were growing fins like jet fighters ready to soar. But it was the New York art market that was truly taking off. When artist Willem de Kooning's show of heroic abstractions opened at the Sydney Janis Gallery in April, it quickly sold out, with the Metropolitan Museum snapping up his 8-foot-tall Easter Monday for its permanent collection. After Jackson Pollock died in a car crash a few months later, de Kooning took his place as America's most famous abstract expressionist. In the San Francisco Bay Area, which had superb museums and thriving art schools but few commercial galleries, most artists taught to pay their bills. So it made headlines in June when two Bay Area painters, David Park and Richard Diebenkorn, sold 11 paintings to a single collector. That collector, Walter P. Chrysler, Jr., was the wealthy heir to an automotive fortune and a voracious art collector. A closeted gay man married to a former ballerina, Chrysler and his wife Jean owned a 2-story New York apartment and a palatial Virginia estate crammed with works by Picasso, Matisse, Rodin, and others. Much of their 3,000-piece collection, which included European old masters, was normally kept in storage. When the Chryslers visited San Francisco, a traveling show of their collection was on view at the Palace of the Legion of Honor. A week after the show opened, Chrysler and his Dartmouth classmate Thomas Colt, the director of the Portland Art Museum, visited Park and Diebenkorn at their studios. Although 2 of the Diebenkorn paintings Chrysler chose were abstract, 3 others were in a more recent figurative style. And all 6 David Park paintings he chose, including Nudes in the Surf, which appeared with a photo of the artist in the article announcing the sale, were figurative. With its pink figures set against a crashing blue wave, Nudes in the Surf in some ways resembles Matisse's Dance No. 1, which was part of Walter Chrysler's collection. Its roughly textured surface and improvised paint handling show the influence of abstract expressionist Clyfford Still, once Park's artistic nemesis. Chrysler's other purchases also show that Park had developed a distinctive new manner of painting. He presented the human figure in a broad style that had its roots in both European modernism and American abstract expressionism. Richard Diebenkorn, 11 years younger than Park and also his former student, had been painting figuratively for just over a year. All 3 of the Diebenkorn canvases Chrysler purchased show men in interior settings, including one who is drawing. It may depict David Park, who Diebenkorn had shown drawing in a small study titled David Park on a Hot Day. The largest of Chrysler's Diebenkorns, Coffee, is lit by 2 yellow spotlights, which give the canvas a surreal glow. For David Park, whose first figurative paintings of the 1950s had been seen by some as a failure of nerve or even a joke, the Chrysler purchase was a sweet victory. For Richard Diebenkorn, who was uncomfortable with acclaim and attention, it was time to get back to the easel. Elmer Bischoff, a close friend of Park and Diebenkorn, was living 3 hours north of San Francisco and missed the chance for a studio visit from Walter Chrysler. But his January show of 15 paintings at the California School of Fine Arts Gallery had made an impact on Paul Mills, the ambitious young director of the Oakland Art Museum, who viewed Park, Diebenkorn, and Bischoff as a trio. He later wrote, "This was the first time any of these painters had shown an entire gallery of figurative artwork, and the impact was unexpected." At the same time as Bischoff's show, Hubert Crean, an artist and critic who had studied with Clyfford Still, published an article titled, "Is There a California School?" Crean, who shared Still's view that San Francisco was a backwater, argued that there was no real school of Bay Area painters, just mere mimicry of abstract expressionists who had taught there after the war. Crehan's curmudgeonly take lit a fire under Paul Mills, who quickly assembled a group show of 20 artists titled California School, Yes or No. At the close of the show, a panel including Crehan and 3 artists discussed the question at hand without reaching any firm conclusions. Crehan opened the panel, asserting that West Coast art lacked enough formal or emotional significance to place it with any meaning under the heading of a California school. Richard Diebenkorn presented a definition. A school implies a certain agreement in principle and ideas, a certain rapport among painters in the same area. Hasselschmidt offered context, explaining that the San Franciscan worries little about prospective buyers, hence his works are more naive and freer in concept. David Park, disparaging the idea of a school, warned that if a school lasts too long, it becomes an academy. The panel, which attracted 125 people, showed Paul Mills that San Francisco's art community was anxious to find the right words to tell the greater art world just who it was. In September of 1956, Elmer Bischoff returned to San Francisco to teach graduate students at the California School of Fine Arts and opened a studio at the Montgomery Block. When his canvas, Orange Sweater, won first place in a show at the Richmond Art Center later that year, it was labeled as an example of New Realism, a style that Paul Mills had codified, which combined abstract values and literal form. In April of 1957, Mills announced The Next Direction to open in June at the Oakland Art Museum. Mills stated that the show, which promised to attract national attention, would present paintings that include the spirit as well as the form in the world around us. The artists, including Park, Bischoff, Diebenkorn, and 11 others, many of them students, included 3 women. The actual show, which Mills delayed so that Arts Magazine could feature it, opened on September 8th with a roster of 12 men and a new title, Contemporary Bay Area Figurative Painting. Behind the scenes, there had been tension, as Richard Diebenkorn later recounted. Well, I just hated this thing of getting people together and forming a school. I remember feeling wildly threatened by that. We had a meeting at David's house. There was Elmer Bischoff, Paul Mills, and myself, and I remember raising my voice and saying, "This should not happen." I hated being labeled. Another artist who felt uncomfortable about the Oakland show was Nathan Oliveira, a rising figurative artist inspired by European modernism. Instead, he took part in an August show hastily organized by the Richmond Art Center that mixed Bay Area abstraction and figuration. Contemporary Bay Area Figurative Painting, given its final title by David Park, included 32 paintings, half of them by Bischoff, Park, and Diebenkorn. The 9 other artists, who showed between 1 and 4 works each, were chosen by Mills and Park and included 4 of Diebenkorn's students. Elmer Bischoff, whose work appeared on the cover of the catalog, showed 6 paintings, more than any other artist. With their expressive surfaces, shaded figures, and notes of contemplative gloom, Bischoff's work was powerfully emotional. What matters most, he had written the year before, is the power of a painting to pierce through all generalities to some particular poignancy of feeling. David Park's large canvas, Interior, showed a Bischoff-like artist drawing while a figure modeled on Lydia Park reclines on a striped comforter. Park's 5 canvases, including a large composition of figures in a landscape, were bold and confident. In the text of the catalog, he is quoted as saying, "Art ought to be a troublesome thing, and one of my reasons for painting representationally is that this makes for much more troublesome pictures." Richard Diebenkorn, whose representational work was taking off in new directions, told Paul Mills, "One wants to see the artifice of the thing as well as the subject. Reality has to be digested. It has to be transmuted by paint. It has to be given a twist of some kind." His nearly 6 foot tall Woman by a Large Window opened up a subject and setting that would occupy him for years to come. Among the other artists in the show were Paul Warner and his partner Bill Brown, whose studio was often the site of figure drawing sessions attended by Park, Diebenkorn, and Bischoff. Warner's painting Glider was activated by gestural brushwork and a palette of grays, greens, and blues. No photos exist of the work that Brown showed, but it was from a series of de Kooning-inspired football collage paintings that had appeared in Life magazine. Henry Villierme, a graduate of the California School of Fine Arts, showed a landscape painting he had painted alongside his teacher Richard Diebenkorn, and a small male bather that shows the influence of David Park. 22-year-old Bruce McGaw, the youngest painter in the show, contributed an expressionistic figure with gesturing hands that remains in the collection of the Oakland Museum. Because James Weeks later destroyed the painting of jazz musicians that he displayed, it survives only in black and white photos. According to newspaper accounts, it was mainly red in color with green accents. The show earned some mildly positive reviews, but also some digs. One critic wrote that many of the figures were, without personality, anonymous creatures emasculated by some monumental emotional fallout. It was a popular show, but not nearly as popular as the Elvis Presley concert that took place in the Municipal Auditorium downstairs 2 weeks after the exhibition traveled to Los Angeles. In Ohio and Colorado, where Park and Diebenkorn paintings from the Chrysler collection had been added, the press was positive. When actor Vincent Price, an early Diebenkorn collector, visited the show at the Dayton Art Institute, he told a local reporter, "If you want to get rich, buy American art." In the wake of the show, Diebenkorn, Bischoff, and Park each found their reputations and their bank accounts greatly enhanced. In March of 1958, Richard Diebenkorn's New York show at the Poindexter Gallery was a huge success, with 20 paintings sold at prices between $300 and $1,800. In February of 1959, Elmer Bischoff was awarded a $10,000 Ford Foundation grant, an amount that equaled 2 years of his teaching salary. Before his untimely death in 1960, David Park was given a solo show at the DeYoung Museum, a show in New York at the Stapleton Gallery, and a promotion to full professorship at UC Berkeley. Today, in 2025, there is a Wikipedia page for the Bay Area Figurative Movement that lists the names of 23 artists grouped into 3 generations, including many that simply should not be there. Clearly, art dealers, eBay sellers, and Wikipedia editors feel that connecting an artist with Bay Area figuration will enhance their reputation and their prices. This problem would not surprise the originators of the 1957 show. As Elmer Bischoff once told an interviewer, "I thought the Bay Area figurative style, was imposed from the outside. It was a simplification that was a matter of convenience for journalists and for historians and for middlemen." Although style may have been imposed on them, Bischoff, Park, and Diebenkorn were individualistic artists whose art and natures were unconstrained. Bischoff's paintings served and expressed his contemplative and emotional nature. Diebenkorn, with his playful and probing mind, stepped back from his subjects and saw their contradictions and complexities. And David Park, who felt that paintings should be troublesome, painted an Eden that included at least one interracial couple and 2 bare-ass surfers that offer a sense of erotic suggestion. All of their choices, including whether to paint abstractly or representationally, were made in the service of free expression.